So, well, initially, it was around early August, very early August, 2017. I received a phone call through my office at the NAACP, and some individuals who knew me personally and had some teachers had reached out to them. They were very concerned. They said, well, hey, there's mold in this school.
I had been contacted by some teachers over there, and they were saying, Flem, this is nothing new. Since we've been at Ashley for years, we've had a mold problem. So I got involved immediately almost with the gentleman who runs the construction of the school system. We had a long conversation.
After I received that call, I reached out to the school system. Hey, I got this complaint, heard from teachers that, possibly there's mold in this school, And so when the school system officials responded to me, it was like, oh, really? Wow, let us check that out.
When I began to hear the stories about the mold, and when I was asked people in the community about it, what they knew about it, then everyone just responded matter of fact, there's been mold in that school for years. And one person said, yeah, the teachers used to scrape it off the wall and throw it in a trash can.
So I kind of left it alone, especially not knowing the history of mold at Ashley. I just assumed, well, that was the issue, they fixed it, let's move on. But then February came around, February of 2018, and teachers began to be very vocal, and they showed up at the school board. I'm like, wait, this still is an issue?
I would address you with this simple request. When you look at that recommendation number 2 in this report, and it says, and I quote, watch for and report mold growth on books, furniture, and other surfaces, as well as recurrent mold odors indoors. They're charging the teachers and staff to do that at Ashley. That to me is an issue. So I hope you take to heart the serious perception issue. The community is watching this very closely. As a young grandfather, I'm watching it too. I got 10 grandkids. So do your best to deliberate and make the best decision for those children at Ashley with haste and urgency. Thank you very much.
Early 2018, and I read about Ashley Academy and the mold issues that were there and that community members have been said have been there for years, and the school board's lack of urgency and response. And I said to myself, if this was a different school with majority white kids, with parents who are lawyers and doctors and who have time and energy to pound down the doors of the school board, they would be doing it, and it would be looking very different than it looks now.
I compared Ashley to what happened to Haynes, and I participated in all of those board meetings when Haynes was upset about the water quality at the school and the chemicals that had seeped into the groundwater and being concerned about the children's safety there. And I watched the board make a decision immediately in the interest of Haynes students. They waited a while before they made a decision in the interest of Ashley students.
Because it took a while for it to kind of reach the white community, honestly. So we heard about it, we went to the local organizing committee meeting and started to get involved, and then just trying to figure out what we could do and to elevate the issue in the white community, because there's so much going on in East Winston that white people frankly never hear about or care about, or it's just a passing thing for them in Winston-Salem.
A lot of community groups and individuals at that point became involved because they saw that this was a real issue that needed to be addressed. And so at that point we gave it an official title, or maybe not unofficial, but a title nonetheless, Action for Ashley. And we all came together under that one banner, Action for Ashley. I coined the phrase, not another brick, not another bond. And because we felt like that our schools were being used as pawns to continue to promote bonds, in which the majority of the money would go to fund schools on the periphery of town, and that they would always have one token project in town, or maybe 2 token projects in town for minimal cost.
When I read the assessment that they did, the first paragraph identifies some mold factor in the school. So I said, Mr. Walker, how can you really clean this up with fixing air conditioning units? This thing needs to be rebuilt.
If you are sincere about your core value, then you would do the right thing. And not just talk about putting a new air conditioning system in, because they tried that at Parkland and it still didn't work. So I suggest that we look at expediting, like Dudley Watts said, fast tracking, building a new school, and putting a school there that those kids in that community can be proud of, because that's an essential for a community. That's like having a church, having a school. Those things are essential for a community to thrive and grow.
The school needs to be replaced. A lot of the response that we got at that point from the then school board, oh, mold is harmless. No historical data that mold causes long-term health problems, X, Y, Z, A, B. So they had the whole dog and pony show. We're gonna look at replacing the school on the next bond.
So in 2016, it was on the top of their working list, because you have to lay out all the bond projects beforehand before you put it on the ballot. And then it wasn't on the ballot. What was on the ballot was money for a design for a new Ashley to then go on the ballot, they say, for the 2022 bond or whenever the next bond was.
What do we want? A new school! When do we want it? Now! When do we want it? A new school! When do we want it? Now!
I felt like we had hit a brick wall. We met, we talked, we politicked, we protested, we did petitions, we rallied, we showed up at school board meeting, we did everything. But when you're facing a group of individuals who are adamant that we're going to do nothing, that we have this plan in place and that we're going to stick to it, there was plenty of days that you wasn't for sure if anything was ever going to come of it, or if they were ever going to make any moves. And so it was very frustrating, but I tell the folk that I felt like we were thrown a lifeline. I was able to have a meeting with the folk from the Southern Coalition for Social Justice, and Peggy Nicholson, and who's the director there. We had good conversations. She came up, met at my office at the NAACP, and they took interest in what was going on here, because unfortunately, this same kind of issue is playing out all around the state.
So that was filed in August of 2018 with Southern Coalition for Social Justice, whose job is to take up cases like this. And they said it was racial, the foundation was racial discrimination happened at Ashley with the environmental and building concerns that were brought about. And that investigation has been opened. So the Office of Civil Rights has been in contact with the school system, getting different data and emails and documentation from them. So the hope, those are really long, can be really like years long. And the hope is that change will happen. The school system will make changes before they're forced to make changes.
But to have them to come on and to file the complaint for us, for the board, for the Office of Civil Rights of the U.S. U.S. Department of Education, to say this complaint has some merit and we're willing to look into it, it really gave us a hope that eventually maybe something will be done.
So they finally gotten to the point now they said they're going to have some land identified to build a new Ashley. But I'm still not convinced until I see an Ashley come off the ground that they're committed to doing that.
Just looking at the action that we're supposed to take tonight, I'm for approving the replacement of the HVAC system and other related repairs, because I understand the importance of having something done immediately in the short term. But we also have to understand Ashley is a really old school. And to hear that the possibility of a new school is 2024 really, really bothers me. That does not sit well with me. It just really doesn't. And it comes a time where we're going to have to sit down and we're going to have a real discussion about going ahead and building a new school or relocating Ashley.
We felt like that we needed to, before any additional action as it concerned Ashley, was that complaint needed to run its course. You know, whatever the Department of Education was going to do, we need to allow that to run its course, see what they discover, see what happened. So at that point, we felt like there was not as much need for immediate action for Ashley in particular, but that issue was symptomatic of a larger policy problem that we had. So the whole premise of developing Ashley was to create a policy agenda of what it's going to take to make our whole school system fair, equitable, quality for everybody. And so that is the driving force. And we've been blessed to have some brilliant minds. You know, folk like Dr. Ed Bell and Dr. Willette Nash.
When I heard that they had expanded to Action for Equity and were discussing building an organization that would deal with systemic change and build a capacity not to be just like a usual protest organization, you know, go to a few meetings and then go away, I thought it might be useful to see what they were doing. And as I discovered more and more, I became more and more interested in what they were doing.
A week before I retired, I was the diversity person for the district. So I've been dealing with these issues of inequity internally for a very long time. So I think I decided to conduct my own exit interview with the school board. And it was around the Ashley issue. And so the week before I retired, I spoke to the board about my concern about their leadership over Ashley and just a request for them to make an equitable decision about the school. And I retired in September. So it was the end of August of 2018 when I spoke to Beverly Emery and the school board about Ashley, and it was September when I joined officially with Action for Equity.
A lot of these folk came around this work and really began to develop a policy agenda that we felt like was equitable for everybody. And so that now is the whole foundation of the work, is making sure that we express to our elected officials, because elected officials answer to the will of the people. And so that we express to them that here's our will, here's the will of the community, you know, that you set forth a policy agenda that increases our entire school system.
We did come up with a strategy, just basically 3 things that we wanted to achieve. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, we have to win, you know, for the community. And we have to, and more importantly too, it's just like, this is an opportunity to show that when we come together, like our voices will be heard. And so I think that, you know, I had several motivations, you know, for these children, motivations for my community, and, you know, and just the understanding that, 10, 15, 20 years, these are going to be the people who are going to be leading.
I've seen initiatives start and fizzle out and not follow through. Action for Equity has been able to do something that no community organization has done before. And that's bring the spotlight to the school district and really force them to look at their policies and the kinds of decisions that they've made through the complaint with the Office of Civil Rights. The other thing that's different about Action for Equity is they have a policy agenda. Most organizations have not come with a policy agenda to try and guide the work of the school board and let the school board know the issues they really like for them to focus on.
We are asking for the development of a matrix and infrastructure plan that focuses on equity. This matrix should identify the resources and infrastructure needs of each school. And we are asking that a draft be publicly available no later than May 2019.
I mean, I still refer to it as our sacred document of when, there's a lot going on and we get pulled into different things or there's different issues happening. We're trying to figure out if it's something we want to get involved in, because again, we're all volunteer. We don't have a lot of capacity to really spread out really wide. We go back and say, is this related to our policy agenda, and is this related to the changes that policy agenda will bring about? And if it's not that we're going to drop that issue, but we may refer people to other organizations that are more focused on that or something. But if we really try to stay focused on the agenda, because we worked really hard to craft that and put that together, because we feel like that's what's going to make the biggest change and really get us moving towards a more equitable school district. Action for Equity, a group created to promote equity in Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools, is issuing the following statement. Our children deserve to be educated in a school district that is equitable and where decisions are made with community input in mind. Unfortunately, with the filing of HB 518 and HB 490, our state representatives are putting partisan politics over the education of our children and the needs of our community. HB 518 attempts to strip the school board of their lawful authority over student assignment and instead would give final approval to the county commissioners. If passed, Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools would be the only school district in the state where the democratically elected Board of Education does not have the final authority to determine matters of student assignment.
We have bullet points that we're working through, and we've made progress on a good amount of them. The school board is receptive and open to conversation and has made changes. If we had the same school board we had a year ago, it might be a different story, but I don't know. But I'm grateful that they seem to be open to what we are bringing to the table and recognize that it's going to take a whole lot of people to right this ship.
For me, white people, it's easy to say anecdotes that say, oh no, this isn't true because I know this one person who this happened, or this one time this happened. When you have data and you have empirical research that says, look, the data shows this is what's happening, it can kind of rip those blinders off for you. And I remember going through racial equity training when they went through the history of all the ways that race was put in place by laws, going back to 1619 when the first Africans came here, enslaved Africans came here. It was like you could see each brick being built in that wall of racism and white supremacy. And that was really powerful for me to see how it was built, because then we can see how to dismantle it. So I think the policy agenda is just so important as a centering document and as a way for us to keep grounded, because there is so much that needs to be done and this issue is so urgent, but if that helps to keep us focused.
For me, I'm concerned about the academic achievement gap, and that's going to be my focus, because I still realize how important education is. And so what I want us to work on is really pushing the district to close the black-white achievement gap.
In fact, I've read a lot of literature on the third grade pipeline. If a child cannot read efficiently by the third grade, they even build prisons based on that statistics. Because they know if you can't read by the third grade, the odds of you being a graduate from high school or even being successful in high school diminishes substantially. And they can project how many prison units they have to have. And now you have private companies building prisons and operating them. It's a travesty, because we can do something to make sure every child can read by the third grade. The question is, do we have the will to do it?
I wish there was more passion around it, more people who could just see that. So we're gonna have to lock up all of these kids because we didn't educate them by the third grade. When do we stop that insanity? When do we decide that this is not the society that we want? But it takes having a conscience.
What has happened in Winston-Salem is a function of specific policy. Ever since I've been here, the most important policy has been, what do they call it, choice. Now, whatever the people say publicly, the result of that policy has produced a school system, there are about 81 schools in the system, 40 to 41 of them are Title I schools, which means they're primarily poor and minority. That's a direct result of school policy. There's an achievement gap that we started to identify last year. Last year when we analyzed it, at 3rd grade reading and math, 8th grade reading and math, between Black, white, and Hispanic.
From 2017 and 18, 67.3% of white students from grades 3 through 8 were career or college ready. 25.8% of Black kids, 28.6% of Hispanic kids. So a 40% achievement gap in 3rd through 8th grade scores. Overall, college and career ready in high school, we only have 46% of our whole school system is college and career ready, yet we graduate 84% of people. So it's like something's not right there with those numbers.
There is no policy in this system for a comprehensive literacy strategy in elementary school. Still isn't. Okay. There isn't a comprehensive, if you look at the organizational chart that exists, you won't find a structure for a system-wide evaluation. All the research literature says that the climate of schools is critical for the success of the children in school. There is no assessment system-wide of climate in the Winston-Salem, Forsyth County schools. What's important? Oh, what do you see? People arguing about whether they're going to spend money about where they build the stadium. Okay. No one says anything about how well children are doing in terms of their education. Okay. Do we know, even if you put aside the Title I schools, do we know the success rate of people who graduate from Winston-Salem, Forsyth County School in their first year of college? Have you seen that reported in the newspapers? No.
You have more students in the public school settings than you have in the private schools, charter schools combined. The bulk of our kids are right there. And so we owe it to them to make sure they get a quality education. Any business that comes to the community looks for access to qualified workers. What's your college situation? What's your high school graduation situation? And they're looking for skilled employees.
Winston-Salem doesn't have a large organization that's scouting for entertainment talent or a large organization that's scouting for athletic talent. So education's still very important here locally. So I think that's why it would be important that parents and politicians and anyone interested in a thriving community, in a thriving economy, to focus on students having an equal and a sound basic education.
It's hurting the entire community. It's not like this inequities in the school only hurt Black kids or brown kids. It hurts everyone, not just kids. It hurts the community, and it hurts, frankly, our economics. If all you care about is economics and business and money, who are you going to hire? How are you going to have employees that are trained to do what you need them to do so you can make more money? You're not.
The achievement gap in schools where it's majority white kids, and the gap is still there. White kids are still achieving at a significantly higher level than the brown and Black kids who are in the high-performing schools. So
it's going to make it so that people don't know each other in their own community. I mean, the divide here, people say it's 52, but I really feel like it's University Parkway, just divides the town in half. And people are afraid to go to the other side of town. They're afraid to interact with people they don't know. And it hurts my soul to think that we're all living here together and we're not able to interact or understand each other.
Every public school student needs an advocate these days. Because the reality is we have a lot of students in our public schools who, for whatever reason, don't get a lot of support from the household like it used to be. When I came to the school system, I graduated in 1970, and I don't remember a time when my mother was not at a PTA meeting. And remember now, I taught in the school system for a long time, And I've gone to PTA meetings where you may have 20 teachers and 2 parents.
I've always been told that my voice matters, that what I have to say is important, and that I should, I've been empowered to say it, and not everybody has had that experience, and I want to use my voice. I'll go to the school board meetings and say, like, y'all are talking about these surveys and how you want to engage parents, but you really need to strip back like all the layers. I mean, there's just so many layers there of people being told that their voices don't matter. So why, what's going to prompt them to speak up?
Ideally, parents should be informed of the performance of the school, the capacities of the teachers, the qualifications, the type of instruction. And then parents should have a voice in saying what they'd like to see happen at the school, what the instruction should look like, what kind of teachers they would like to have there, and ideally bring some support to what's happening academically at school and socially and emotionally, and bring that same kind of support at home. Parents do that. We have parents that do that. I don't think we have a critical mass of parents that do that because, as I said, Winston-Salem is much, the poverty here is among the working poor. So parents are working.
From a personal standpoint, I always placed myself in a position of the parent. And I really viewed every student at Ashley as though, they were my own child. Like, how hard would I fight for my own children?
The rubber hit the road for me and my family because we can walk to one of those low-performing schools, and we go and my kids would go play on the playground, and if we did not send our kids there, I would have to say the honest reason why, and that would be because it's not a good enough school, but it's good enough for all these other kids who go there. So that was the kind of moral dilemma that I was working through.
So those schools would never be balanced unless someone intentionally makes it a policy to equalize the resources. I've gone to school meetings in Kernersville, for example. The place is filled with parents, and the school system responds accordingly because they put demands on the system. You go to a school like Mineral Springs Elementary, you may have 3 parents, and they don't feel the pressure from the parents because they're not there. So that's why I'm saying advocates are so important, and groups like Equity, they play a vital role in making sure those students' voices are heard, and they've been have an advocate in an adult fashion to echo their concerns.
Not everyone is able to go to work, go home, take care of your kids, put them to sleep, and then go to community meetings, and then do a lot of stuff at night or advocate for your kids at their own school because it's challenging. You may have language barriers. Winston has I think 30-something% Latinx population and other languages. We have a lot of refugees that have moved here in the last few years.
Last night we had maybe 8 or 9 Hispanic families there, and they didn't have proper translation for them. So they said, hey, we're going to show up tonight. So the parents are here tonight. This board doesn't even have translation for them. They're here. No, they don't know what we're saying. We need help. So if it's help here, if the help isn't even here, we need the help in our school as well. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Burrow.
And then there's also racial dynamics. I think if you were traumatized in the school system as a kid, you don't want to go back and try and fight for your kid because it's traumatizing all over again. And so if there's people like me or like the rest of us in Action for Equity that can take that up for you to relieve some of that pressure off of you so you can be a parent and be fully there for your kid, then we want to do that.
Do you feel more optimistic at all?
That's a good question. Depends on the day. Depends on how much I'm feeling on track with Jesus.
Action for Equity gives me hope. Gives me hope that one day we could have real change, and to have been a part of that foundation, and to have been an integral part of creating that movement I love it. I love it. I joke with them all the time. You know, I fell off, I fell in the background, but I love it because there's people who came along the way. You know, like I said earlier at the beginning, it was Kelly and I, you know, just trying to fight the good fight. But once others came around and really started, you know, being just as passionate and coming together, and they're diverse. You know, it's no one group. You know, it's a diverse group of individuals that have come together to do this work, and so it's refreshing.
You know, we need to get off social media and get into the streets, get off social media and get into the school board, go to these school board meetings, go to the city council meetings. Being home and being upset is not going to resolve anything. We need people to actually start taking action. You being mad does nothing for nobody. As a matter of fact, it's more harmful to yourself. So we just really need to, you know, to start doing the one thing that we can do.
Don't take my word. Go do the research yourself, and talk with teachers, talk with principals, and engage board members, and let board members know how they feel about these issues, what they'd like to see happen, and pay careful attention to how board members vote. Be actively involved in politics, not just school board, city council, county commissioners, because they're all connected, and vote. If you don't like what someone is doing, vote them out of office.
I don't know what it's like to be a person of color in this country, but I can listen and try to use my talents and my voice to make a change. So I think, like, you gotta be humble, say, I don't know, but I got 2 years and I'm gonna listen and do what I can and contribute where I can.
Usually what people have done historically here, they assume you'll complain for a little while, maybe protest for a little while. They may pat you on the head, but eventually you'll get tired and go away. You ain't going away. Not at all.
So I just think for people to see it as a crisis, in which it is, because when you have generations of, you know, children, generations that do not have an education, especially going into the economy that we're having, then this is a disaster. And, you know, what happens 10, 20, 30 years from now is going to be a reflection of what all of us did today.
Because every day we let this system continue the way it is, it's hurting a child and thousands of children, and that's just not okay.
It's true that people are powerful and they do have lots of influence, but they don't really control everything. They can't. And if you plan, organize, and work, there's no telling what you can accomplish. That's the important thing. And of all things, don't quit.